welcome. You've found your way to a quiet story, a story that lives beneath the grand staircases, behind the heavy kitchen doors, in the tucked away corners where silence lingers the longest. This is not a tale of ballrooms or chandeliers. It is not about those who dined late and slept long. This is about the ones who rose before the sun, and often fell asleep long after it had set. In Victorian England, servants moved through homes, like shadows present but unnoticed, needed but rarely known. They scrubbed the stone floors, lit the fires. Polished boots they would never wear. And when the house grew quiet, when the lamps were dimmed upstairs, their day was not yet over. There is a kind of loneliness that lives in those late hours. A hush so deep it echoes. Not sad exactly, just still. Before we begin, if stories like this bring you comfort, you're gently invited to subscribe. So whenever the day feels heavy, you'll always have a place to rest. And if you feel moved to share, tell me what time it is, where you are, and where in the world you're listening from. Because somewhere, in some quiet hour, others are here too, listening with you. Now, let us go below stairs, where the fire is low and the hearth still crackles faintly with warmth. Let us walk beside a tired soul as she lays out tomorrow's linens, sweeps the ashes into the scuttle, and finally lets her hands rest. This is the story of the loneliness that settles when the house above has gone still. The year is 1856, in the heart of the Victorian era. Queen Victoria is now well into her reign, and the world, especially in England, feels firmly ordered, proper, divided by class and lined with lace. It is a time of industry and empire, of polished silver and hushed expectations. The great homes of the upper and middle classes gleam with brass knobs, chandeliers, and tightly drawn curtains. But behind every shining tea tray, beneath every quiet breakfast served precisely at 8, was a person who rose while the sky was still dark. A servant, or perhaps 2, or perhaps 20. Not all homes were grand, but even modest middle-class families often employed at least one servant, a maid of all work, a cook, a scullery girl, a boy for errands. They were not chosen, not in the way we think of jobs now. They were placed, sent by families who could no longer afford to keep all mouths fed, sent from country villages, from workhouses, from quiet cottages where hope had grown thin. Some came willingly, some came with fear. Many were just children. They entered the household from the back through the servants' entrance, a door rarely seen by guests, often narrow and low, as if even the threshold asked them to stoop, and once inside, they worked. From dawn until long after dusk, they swept, stitched, boiled, scrubbed, polished, and carried. They lit fires with cold fingers, tended to laundry in winter courtyards, emptied chamber pots without complaint. Their names were rarely spoken upstairs, their footsteps muffled behind thick walls, their rest always postponed. But they were there, in every house that stood tall and still, keeping order, maintaining warmth, holding the world upright quietly. This story is not about all of them. No story could be. But tonight, we follow one, a single servant girl in a quiet home. As night falls, and silence settles over the drawing room above, this is her hour, not of freedom, but of quiet, a space between duty and sleep, between the last dish dried, and the moment her head touches the pillow. Come walk with her, step softly, and listen, because even in the quietest corners, there are stories. The door to the scullery closes with a low thud. The sound is soft, like a breath exhaled. She stands still for a moment, her back just slightly bent, hands dry from lye soap and steam. The water in the sink has gone cold. The last plate has been dried and stacked. A single candle flickers from the shelf above, casting long shadows across stone and wood. Upstairs, the hush has settled. T, he master, and mistress have retire. D, the drawing-room clock has chimed its final hour. Boots have been removed. Parlours darkened. No more requests will echo down the bell system tonight. It is not yet her time to sleep. There are still things to do, but these final tasks are different. They move more slowly, more gently, as if even the house itself has begun to breathe a little softer. She lifts a folded cloth from the edge of the sink. It's damp with the scent of starch and lavender. She walks it to the linen press, bare feet whispering against worn floorboards. The hallway is dim, lit only by the candle she carries. Each flame she passes has been extinguished done by one by her own hand. She finds a kind of peace in this final round. No one speaks to her, no footsteps behind. Only the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway and the faint crackle of a settling fire. At the hearth, she stoops. There's little flame left, just a warm red glow, like the last breath of the day, resting beneath ash. She lifts the poker with practiced hands, not to stir the embers, but to gently bank the. She knows exactly how to do it. She learned it long ago. A certain way to turn the coal and press it just enough so that a little warmth remains until morning. That warmth will greet her again when she rises, and she will rise before the house stirs, before the sky lightens, before the crows call out from the trees. But that's not yet. Not yet. Now, there is a hallway to walk, a shutter to fasten, a bell pull to reset, tomorrow's kindling to stack in the basket by the stove. She passes the mirror near the back staircase and catches a glimpse of herself, just for a second, a candle-lit face, eyes rimmed in fatigue, hair pulled tight and neat, a faint smudge of ash on her sleeve. She does not stop to look, but she notices. There's something about this time of night when the house is not watching, when no voices call her name, when her hands are finally her own, that allows the smallest, softest things to be felt. She thinks briefly of home. Not this home, this fine townhouse with its carpets and clocks, but the little stone cottage where she was born, where the wind sounded different through the eaves, where her mother used to sing while stirring porridge. S. He does not allow herself to think for long. It's not safe to lean too far into longing. Instead, she wipes the windowsill, adjusts a chair back into place, lays out the breakfast cloth in the still dark kitchen. The spoon must be placed just so. The teacups turned outward. The master prefers his napkin starched, not folded. She does it all without thought, without rush, without mistake. These final movements feel like muscle memory, like prayer. She climbs the narrow servant's stairs, the candle still burning in her hand. The steps creak beneath her, but not loudly. She knows which boards to avoid. At the end of the corridor is her room. Small, square, a wash basin, a bed just wide enough, a shelf with 2 books, both read a dozen times. The blanket smells faintly of soap and cold iron. The straw mattress shifts beneath her as she lowers herself carefully. She does not blow out the candle right away. For a moment, she simply sits. Her fingers curl loosely in her lap. Her shoulders begin to soften. The breath she didn't know she'd been holding begins to slip free. She thinks of nothing in particular. Or perhaps she thinks of everything. The teacup she chipped 3 weeks ago. The way the wind rattled the kitchen door this morning, the letter from her sister folded carefully in the drawer beneath her stocking, but mostly she just listens to the quiet, to the hum of stillness that now fills the walls. It is a loneliness, yes, but not an empty one. It is a solitude filled with meaning, a space where no one asks anything of her, where her name does not need to be whispered, where she is allowed to simply beef only for this hour. She leans forward and exhales toward the candle. The flame gutters, flickers, and fades, and with it, another day ends. The room is dark now, the air is cool, and the weight of the blanket begins to settle over her shoulders, like a soft promise that she is, finally, allowed to rest. The fire in the kitchen below has quieted. The ticking of the parlour clock is only a distant rhythm, muffled by stone and timber. Upstairs, in the master's bedroom, there is no sound. Not of voices, not of movement, only stillness wrapped around every beam, every curtain, every closed door. And in this stillness, her thoughts begin to rise. Not loudly, not in urgency, but slowly, like mist curling above a moor. There is no one to hush them now. She lies on her side, hands tucked beneath her cheek, and allows memory to visit her. It begins with the field beyond her childhood home, the one with the crooked oak at its edge. She sees it clearly, even in the dark. Its branches stretched wide like tired arms, its bark rough and comforting beneath her palm. She remembers sitting beneath it once, with a slice of oat cake in her lap, watching a cloud shaped like a horse drift by. It had been a quiet afternoon. Her mother was nearby, pulling weeds from the garden, humming something old and wordless. She does not remember what the tune was, only that it made the air feel softer. A long breath leaves her body. That memory isn't special. It holds no drama, no great moment, and yet she clings to it as if it were something rare. Perhaps it is. So much of her life now is motion, routine, chores lined up like beads on a string, each task leading to the next. But here, in the privacy of night, she can unstring them for a moment. Let them scatter. Let herself simply drift. She thinks of the letter in her drawer, the one from her sister. It arrived last week, folded carefully, tied with ribbon unnecessary kindness that made her chest ache a little. Her sister wrote of the baby, how he had learned to sit up, how he smiled when the morning light touched the window. She will never meet him. Not now, not soon. Travel is too dear, and her wage is small. But sometimes she pretends she's there, just for a moment. She imagines holding him, rocking him near the hearth, singing the song their mother used to hum. She doesn't cry. She hasn't cried in months, not because there's no sadness, but because the sadness has become part of her, like the ache in her hands, or the creak in her knees, familiar, manageable, quiet. A small breeze nudges the corner of the curtain. It flutters slightly, letting in the faintest starlight through the narrow window above her bed. She turns slightly and watches the shadow move. For a moment, it feels as though the world is breathing with her, as though the stars themselves are watching, not from a distance, but from just beyond the sill. Pate. She finds comfort in that. In being small, but not forgotten. In being tired, but not alone. She whispers, one line of a prayer, just a breath, really. Something she heard the cook say once before bed. It is not for forgiveness, not for blessing, just for peace. And peace, in this hour, is enough. The blanket warms to her shape. The straw beneath her settles with a sigh. and her thoughts begin to soften, like wool soaking in warm water. No more memories rise, no more words come, only stillness, only breathe, and the long, slow surrender of a servant girl falling gently into sleep. But even in the quietest corners, another voice lingers. Another set of footsteps softly echo down the hallway. Another heart, just as tired, just as full of stories.
Let me walk with you now, not to hurry the story along, but to carry it forward, gently, slowly, like one candle passed to another in the dark. Because some silences are meant to be shared, and the quietest truths often arrive in more than one voice. So come, the hour is late, but there's still more to see, more to feel, and more to remember. Let's go on, together. The night has deepened. Outside the narrow window above her bed, the stars no longer shimmer with the same sharpness they held just an hour ago. Their edges blur now, softened by the thin veil of mist rolling in from the fields beyond the city. A chill creeps along the sill, trailing its fingers gently down the wall, curling around the iron bed frame like ivy. But she is not fully asleep, not quite. Her body rests, her limbs heavy and still, but her mind drifts. It often does in this hour, the time between yesterday and today, the hour not claimed by task or name or voice. In this space, there is no bell to ring her from sleep, no floor to scrub, no brass to shine. And so her thoughts, long held back like water behind a gate, are free to flow where they will. Tonight, they drift toward questions, small ones, not the loud, desperate kind that beg for answers, but the quiet ones that linger at the corners of consciousness, the kind that sigh more than speak. Would anyone notice if she left? Would the house feel emptier without her in it? She does not resent the family upstairs. She does not curse their comfort, nor envy their soft shoes and well-stoked fires. But sometimes, she wonders what it would be like to be seen, to be known, not as a shadow who moves through their world unnoticed, but as someone whose absence would echo. She does not expect kindness. She does not crave grand gestures. Just something, a name spoken gently, a moment of stillness shared, a cup of tea poured without obligation. But those things are not given here. They never were. They too are young, younger than her, their fingers still soft, still learning the ache of scrubbing lye, the rhythm of never-ending errands. She has no sisters here, no friends, not truly. Only familiarity, only proximity. They work side by side, but rarely speak beyond what is needed. Not out of dislike, but out of weariness. Words are costly when the body is tired. Sometimes she writes letters she never sends. She writes them in her head, mostly, while starching linens or walking to the market. Letters to her sister, to her mother, long buried in a churchyard behind the hills, to a boy whose name she hasn't spoken in years. The words always start the same. I'm still here. I wake early. I go to bed late. I haven't dropped a single teacup this week. The master's collar was pressed sharp. The milk was not spoiled. I did everything right. I was careful. I was quiet. I was good. And always, whether she means to or not, the words end the same. Do you remember me? The moonlight shifts. Her mother once told her that the greatest danger in life wasn't poverty, but invisibility. Even the poorest man on the moor, she said, can leave tracks in the frost. But some girls, Some girls are taught to walk so lightly they leave nothing behind. She hadn't understood it then. She was only 9. Her boots were too large and her apron too clean. She thought it was poetry, something meant to sound wise rather than be lived. Now she knows better. Now she understands that some lives, her life, are lived quietly enough to be forgotten, even as they unfold. Not by cruelty, not even by neglect, but by the simple machinery of a world built to move forward without them. She turns onto her side, careful not to wake the others. In the narrow corridor that links the servants' rooms, 2 girls share the other chamber. One snores faintly, the other whimpers in her sleep. Dreams, perhaps, of home or of hardship. A sliver of it lands across the wooden floorboards like a soft sigh. The grain of the wood looks silver now, the knots in the floor like eyes watching in silence. She shifts again, placing both hands beneath her cheek, curling slightly, as if the pose itself might offer comfort. She does not cry. She rarely does. There's a numbness that settles in after enough time. Not pain, not sorrow, just quiet. A sort of tired that sleep cannot cure. A silence that is not peaceful, but patient. She remembers one evening, months ago, or maybe a year, when the mistress passed her in the corridor and said softly, "You do such good work." The words were quick, nearly forgotten as they were spoken, but they lingered. She carried them in her apron pocket for days, like a scrap of cloth folded tight, worn smooth by touch. She told no one, not because she feared envy, but because she feared it would vanish if spoken aloud, like breath on a mirror. It was the only time her work was acknowledged in words, not in duties increased, not in the absence of reprimand, but in an actual sentence, with her in it. The candle has long since gone out. The fire downstairs is ash and silence. And still she lies awake, listening to the ticking of the world. It is in moments like this that the loneliness feels largest. Not because she is unloved. She believes, somewhere, that her sister thinks of her. That a friend from the village still speaks her name when remembering school days. That somewhere in the world there are people who would grieve her absence. But none of them are here. None of them see her fingers crack from soap. None see her feet swell in boots worn too long. None know the shape of her days, the sound of her breath when she finally lies still. And so the loneliness doesn't come from being alone, but from being unknown. Outside, a fox crosses the back lane. Its paws make no sound on the frozen soil. Its eyes catch the starlight. She does not see it, but it sees her, curled just behind the bricks and beams, behind 100 years of rules and walls and silent routines. The fox moves on, but the moment lingers, the quiet knowledge that something else was awake. Something else moved through the night, unseen. Eventually, her eyes grow heavy, not suddenly, but like curtains drawn slowly across a window. Her last thoughts are not words, not memories, just sensations. The weight of the blanket, the softness of the wall, the slight ache behind her knees, and a question that is not spoken, but felt. Is this enough? Not a cry for more, not a hunger, just a wondering. A quiet breath in the space between heartbeats. And then, sleep. Finally. Not deep, not free from dream, but rest at last. And in that rest, the loneliness softens, not disappears, but loses its edges, becomes something less sharp, less heavy. And as the world outside her window prepares to shift once again, as ovens are lit and boots are laced, and the house above stirs into life, she sleeps for just a little while longer, and in that sleep there is peace. The hearth still held its heat. Down in the servants' quarters, before the rest of the house stirred, before even the parlour clock could stretch into its first chime of the day, the scullery maid Mary had already risen. The hour was barely 4. Outside, London was a hush of mist and horse's breath. But down here, beneath the grand staircases, under the polished floors, life had already resumed. Imagine now that you are with her. A small cot, a wool blanket heavy from years of laundering. You sit up. Your bones ache from yesterday's bending, and the day before that, and the day before that. You reach for your apron and pin it, slow from sleep, your fingers moving out of habit more than thought. You hear the rustle of fabric from the bed across the room. Alice, the kitchen maid, groans and shifts. "All ready?" she mumbles, voice still thick with sleep. "Eh," Mary answers. Her voice is gentle, hoarse with cold. "The range won't light itself." She doesn't mean it sharply. The kitchen glows a touch warmer. It will still be an hour before it's truly warm, but already the worst of the cold has been pushed back a few inches. The door opens. Mr. Griggs, the butler, steps in. "Ladies," he nods. You both straighten, not from fear, but from long-trained habit. He's old, but his coat is pressed and his spine stiff as a board. "Cook'll want the scullery cleaned early," he says. "There's guests this afternoon. Tea for 12. And her ladyship wants the drawing-room flowers fresh by 9. "Yes, Mr. Griggs," you say. He's gone in seconds, his footsteps a soft echo down the hall. By the time the rest of the house begins to murmur, you've already boiled the kettle, set the dough to rise, and folded 12 linen napkins into triangles sharp enough to impress the mistress herself. The clock in the servants' corridor ticks softly. Light is rising now, faint grey against the frost-rimmed windows. You pass Elsie on the stairs, the upstairs maid, just 16. "Watch the newel post," you whisper. It creaks. She nods, grateful. "I'll start in the nursery." If they wake and she's not up yet, she shouts. You remember. You all do. Her ladyship's voice is thin and bright and cuts like bone china. You wouldn't wish her temper on a child. In the scullery, the day sharpens. Water splashes, pans are dried, boots await blacking. You hum softly, a tune your mother used to sing. Something Irish, though you've forgotten the name. It carries into the cold corners. Cook arrives just after 6, her cheeks ruddy with chill and early temper. "Morning, Mary," she says briskly. "Morning, cook." She sniffs the air. "You've had the bread on, then?" You nod. It's rising near the hearth. Should be ready to bake before 7. Good girl. Those 2 words, they sit warm in your chest like tea. Praise is rare, and when it comes, it softens you in places you didn't know were tight. You're scrubbing the floor by the back door when James, the boot boy, darts in. He's barely 12, all elbows and knees. "Mary, the milk cart's late. Cook's in a fit." You wipe your hands and fetch your shawl. Out you go into the cobbled alley where the frost still clings to the stone. You speak to the milkman. His horse snorts, breath white in the dawn. Bit of a delay, he says. The cartwheel froze last night. Here's a little cream on the house. Thank you, you say. Polite, reserved. Back inside, you hand cook the tin. Only just arrived, you explain. She grunts, but her eyes soften. Thank you. You look around the kitchen. Alice has scrubbed the flagstones. Elsie has taken the tea tray up. James is blacking the boots now, tongue poked in concentration. You notice the light finally coming through the high windows. The kind of light that promises nothing, but offers a sort of endurance. A quiet agreement. If you keep moving, the day will move with you. You return to your duties, cleaning the breakfast crockery, folding the cloths, checking on the bread. It has risen well, and in these simple things, the quiet ache of your life finds rhythm. Later, much later, as you step outside for a moment to shake crumbs from a cloth, you pause. The sky is pale, not blue, not yet, but soft with a promise. You take a breath, and in that breath, dear reader, yes, you, standing now in worn boots, apron flecked with flour, hands raw from lie, you feel something that doesn't quite have a name. It's not freedom, it's not joy, but it's yours. And that, perhaps, is enough. The bells have stopped ringing. The silver has been polished. The rugs beaten. The boots blacked and lined by the back door. Now imagine this. The sun has dipped below the rooftops of London, casting a grey-pink haze across the soot-streaked windows of the servants' quarters. The house is quiet, elegant, dignified, and still. And you, dear reader, have just finished folding the last towel of the day. The kitchen is warmer now, a dull glow from the range, keeping the worst of the night's cold at bay. You sit by it, hands raw, back stiff, but heart quiet. There's a moment, just one, where no one is calling your name. No one is needing, commanding, correcting, and you can breathe. Mary watches the coals shift, her apron stained with broth, her sleeves damp from scrubbing. Across the room, Alice is mending a tear in her bodice. Elsie nearly dropped the teapot today, she says, threading her needle again. You nod. She's so small, that tray near swallows her. Alice chuckles. She said her ladyship looked at her like she'd brought mud in on a silver spoon. You both laugh, quietly, so it doesn't carry up the stairwells. There is a gentleness to this hour. The labour is done. The masters are fed, entertained, and tucked away with brandy and books. Below, in this hidden world, you can almost pretend. Do you miss them? Alice asks after a while, not looking up. You don't ask who. You know. Every day, you say. She nods. I dream of my brother sometimes. He's always on the fence near our barn, watching the cows come in. I wake up, and it's just the ceiling here. Just this place. You sip from a chip mug. Weak tea again. Still, it warms. Mr. Griggs appears briefly in the doorway. 5 o'clock wake up again tomorrow. With guests for luncheon. Yes, Mr. Griggs, you both say, in practiced unison. He vanishes. The embers crackle. Outside, the wind carries a whistle through the chimney. A lonely tune. Alice chuckles. She said her ladyship looked at her like she'd brought mud in on a silver spoon. You both laugh, quietly, so it doesn't carry up the stairwells. There is a gentleness to this hour. The labour is done. The masters are fed, entertained, and tucked away with brandy and books. Below, in this hidden world, you can almost pretend. Do you miss them? Alice asks after a while, not looking up. You don't ask who. You know. Every day, you say. I dream of my brother sometimes. He's always on the fence near our barn, watching the cows come in. I wake up and it's just the ceiling here. Just this place. You sip from a chipped mug. Weak tea again. Still, it warms. Mr. Griggs appears briefly in the doorway. 5 o'clock wake up again tomorrow. We've guests for luncheon. Yes, Mr. Griggs, you both say in practiced unison. He vanishes. The embers crackle. Outside, the wind carries a whistle through the chimney. A lonely tune. Like a lullaby, forgotten. Do you think we'll always be here? Alice whispers. The question drifts between you, soft and dangerous. You shake your head. I hope not. A silence grows, but it isn't heavy, just honest. The hallway is dim now. Elsie peeks in, eyes sleepy. Should I cover the bread for morning, Mary? You nod. Thank you, love. She disappears again, slippers whispering across stone. You close your eyes for a moment. Behind your lids, your father's field, your mother's song, your sister's laugh as she chased hens through the dirt. You open them again. London, brick and coal. The hush of a house you do not own, filled with things you may not touch. Still, in this space, there's a kind of peace, a thread of comfort in shared hardship, in the rhythm of the day, in the gentle presence of the others. You rise to blow out the candle. As the light fades, you whisper, almost without thinking, "Good night, Mum," and the room, in its quiet understanding, holds the name tenderly. You think we'll always be here, Alice whispers. The question drifts between you, soft and dangerous. You shake your head. I hope not. A silence grows, but it isn't heavy, just honest. The hallway is dim now. Elsie peeks in, eyes sleepy. Should I cover the bread for morning, Mary? You nod. Thank you, love. She disappears again, slippers whispering across stone. You close your eyes for a moment. Behind your lids, your father's field, your mother's song, your sister's laugh as she chased hens through the dirt. You open them again. London, brick and coal. The hush of a house you do not own, filled with things you may not touch. Still, in this space, there's a kind of peace, a thread of comfort in shared hardship, in the rhythm of the day, in the gentle presence of the others. You rise to blow out the candle. As the light fades, you whisper, almost without thinking, "Good night, Mum." And the room, in its quiet understanding, holds the name tenderly. The work is done, or as done as it can be before it all begins again. The hearth glows softly in the kitchen, the range now resting after its long day. Pans are stacked, towels are drying, boots lined neatly by the back door. Outside, the sun has finally surrendered. Dusk has drawn its pale blue curtain across the rooftops, and a stillness settles like dust across the quiet rooms. Now, dear reader, let yourself slip again into her shoes, her body tired, her fingers rough, her breath slow as she sinks onto the wooden bench by the kitchen wall. Her apron is streaked with soot and flour. A piece of bread, saved from the corner of the tray, rests in her hand, half eaten. This is the moment no one speaks of, the minute between duty and sleep. Alice, the kitchen maid, sits across from her, peeling an apple with a small knife. "I saw your bread came up nice today," she says, without looking up. She nods. "Rows quicker near the hearth. Cook mentioned it. Said you've a good hand for it." There's a quiet pride in that, though it's not spoken aloud. Instead, they sit in the hush that only shared fatigue understands. Mr. Griggs passes through, slower now, coat unbuttoned. "Ladies," he nods again, this time with less formality, more familiarity. "Good night, Mr. Griggs," they answer in tandem. He pauses. "That tea for 12 went down well. Her ladyship was pleased." "Thank you, sir," she says, lowering her eyes. The praise is enough to carry her another hour if needed. Once he's gone, the silence returns. Alice hums something under her breath. A folk tune. Irish, maybe. You shift on the bench. Your body aches in places that have no names, but you do not complain. Instead, you let your mind wander as you watch the candle flicker on the far wall. Your thoughts begin to float. You think of home, a place far north of London, with hills and a stream that ran past your grandmother's house. You remember the smell of heather, of coal smoke, of wet wool drying by the fire. Your mother brushing your hair, your brother chasing geese in the yard. It was never easy, but it was yours. Alice breaks the quiet. You ever think of leaving? You blink. It takes a moment to answer. Sometimes. But where to? Back home. There's nothing there now. She nods, slicing another curl from the apple. Same here. My da's remarried. New wife doesn't much like me. You understand. So many girls here are like that. Nowhere else to go. No better place to be. The candle sputters. You stand, stretching stiff limbs. I'll turn in, you say. You coming? Alice shakes her head. Just a bit longer. I like this time. You nod. You understand. The stillness is rare, a luxury earned by silence. You climb the narrow back stairs, one hand trailing the wooden rail. The house above is dark, but not silent. A clock chimes faintly. A floorboard creaks as someone turns in their bed. Somewhere upstairs, a baby fusses. You remember the smell of heather, of coal smoke, of wet wool drying by the fire. Your mother brushing your hair. Your brother chasing geese in the yard. It was never easy, but it was yours. Alice breaks the quiet. You ever think of leaving? You blink. It takes a moment to answer. Sometimes. But where to? Back home? There's nothing there now. She nods, slicing another curl from the apple. Same here. My da's remarried. New wife doesn't much like me. You understand. So many girls here are like that. Nowhere else to go. No better place to be. The candle sputters. You stand, stretching stiff limbs. I'll turn in, you say. You coming? Alice shakes her head. Just a bit longer. I like this time. You nod. You understand. The stillness is rare, a luxury earned by silence. You climb the narrow back stairs, one hand trailing the wooden rail. The house above is dark, but not silent. A clock chimes faintly. A floorboard creaks as someone turns in their bed. Somewhere upstairs, a baby fusses. The mistress murmurs something sharp. But in the attic, your little cot awaits. The straw mattress has sunk to your shape. The blanket is coarse, but warm. You light your candle stub and let the glow touch the slanted walls. The small dresser holds your comb, your worn book of psalms, a folded letter. You sit on the edge of the bed. Take off your shoes. Undo your braid. Let your fingers rest in your lap. Outside, a star peers through the attic window. Inside, your thoughts are slow, softened by weariness. You whisper aloud, only to yourself, another day. It is not resignation, it is a quiet strength. You lie back, and as your eyes close, the candle burns low. Let yourself imagine this moment, reader. Let yourself feel it. The earned silence, the peace of doing all that could be done. And as the stars drift overhead, you too may rest. The kitchen lies quiet now. The hearth is low. Shadows stretch tall across the tiled floor, reaching into corners where the scent of coal and flour still lingers. The hum of the house has dwindled. Boots no longer scuffle down the back stairs. Trays no longer rattle. and even the clock on the mantel seems to tick more gently, as if not to disturb what remains of the day. Imagine yourself here. The apron strings are unknotted. Your hands, though sore, lie still in your lap. You sit by the cooling stove, eyes half closed, listening to nothing in particular. A cup of tea, long gone cold, rests beside you. You haven't the heart to sip it. The room is dim now. A single candle flickers on the table, its light stretching wide over weary surfaces. There is a quiet inside you that matches the room. All around, the house has slipped into its second sleep. The masters upstairs are at their books, or already drifting. The nursery is hushed, the parlour dark, and not even the butler's step can be heard. It is this hour, neither night nor late day, that often finds you most fully alone. Mary leans her elbows on the table. Her shoulders curve with exhaustion, not just of body, but of soul. And in her silence, you feel it too, that strange truth that in a house full of people, one can still be entirely alone. They say servants are part of the family, Alice had once whispered. But families don't forget your name when they pass you in the hall. She'd laughed afterward, but you saw the truth of it in her eyes. Mary picks up the cloth in her lap, idly running a worn patch between her fingers. No one has spoken to her since supper, save a mumbled good night from Elsie. The kitchen bell hasn't rung, and in this stillness, the emptiness reveals itself, not as a storm, not loud, but slow, creeping, like the way chill settles into stone. You hear the faint wind beyond the scullery door. You think of the world outside. You imagine the road past the square, the stalls packing up for night, the soft clip of hooves, and a mother somewhere tucking her child into bed with stories and warm bread. That world, once yours, now feels as distant as a dream. Mary stands, walks to the window, and leans her forehead to the glass. It's cold. The stars above blink, uncaring. She remembers lying beneath those same stars once, before this life. Before floors to scrub and fires to build. They're the same everywhere, she murmurs, almost to herself. You watch her lips move, but the words aren't meant to be heard. They're meant to be felt deep in the hollow place where the want for home never truly faded, only dulled. And now, dear reader, feel that place within you. Imagine yourself not as Mary, but with her, sitting beside her in the quiet. Both of you looking out toward a sky that cannot offer answers. In the reflection of the glass, her eyes are tired, not just from the day, but from the years, from the sameness, the repetition, the way life moves, but never moves forward. I used to laugh more, she says, barely a whisper. There's no one to answer. And maybe that's the hardest part. Not the aching feet or the raw hands, but the absence of voices that speak to you, not at you. She closes her eyes, only for a moment. A long breath fills her chest, slow and deep. Not sorrow, not yet. Just the ache of knowing that this is the shape of her life now. And for all her hope, for all her silent longing, the walls will be the same tomorrow. The routine, the same. The voices, polite. The days, full. But the company, that quiet, ever-present absence, will remain. Loneliness has become her companion. Not cruel, not kind. Just there. In the reflection of the glass, her eyes are tired. Not just from the day, but from the years. from the sameness, the repetition, the way life moves, but never moves forward. I used to laugh more, she says, barely a whisper. There's no one to answer. And maybe that's the hardest part, not the aching feet or the raw hands, but the absence of voices that speak to you, not at you. She closes her eyes, only for a moment. A long breath fills her chest, slow and deep. Not sorrow, not yet. Just the ache of knowing that this is the shape of her life now. And for all her hope, for all her silent longing, the walls will be the same tomorrow. The routine, the same. The voices, polite. The days, full. But the company, that quiet, ever-present absence, will remain. Loneliness has become her companion. Not cruel, not kind, just there. And in this, she finds something strange. Not comfort, but acceptance. Because sometimes, what we live with longest no longer feels like pain. It simply becomes part of us. The hearth breathes its last embers. The candle dies. And the kitchen, like her heart, folds into silence.